Welcome to this video about round 9 of the Olympiad. Played today, so I caught up with my schedule here, and this is the most exciting round yet, I must say. Very spectacular round and also very important for the overall standings. Let's go quickly through the top results here. I'll keep the best for last. Ukraine beat France in a duel of pursuing teams 3-1. Poland against Azerbaijan ended in a tie 2-2, with Rajabov losing his first game against Wojtaszek. Armenia beat Germany 2.5, 1.5, and I must say I was rather disappointed at the end, because I think after about 3.5 hours it simply looked like Germany would win this match, or at least tie it, and losing it was really a bit of a letdown at the end. Daniel Friedman, by the way, the German champion, playing on board 4 here only, won yet another game for a fantastic performance. He must be clearly above 2,800 performance here. Then China beat the surprise team of the Philippines 3.5. And finally we come to the match of the round, and maybe the match of the whole tournament so far. The USA played against Russia. Russia was in the lead before this round, and pretty much if they would win today against the United States, it's very close to being the title. But it turned out to be a really amazing match, where I picked, as you can see already here, the game Nakamura against Kramnik. Turned out to be an amazing match. I can tell you the results of the other boards. Board 4, there was Yakovenko playing Ray Robson, the youngster from the US, and Yakovenko won a fine game at the end. He has a brilliant Olympiad. Karyakin played a draw against Onishuk. And there was this was always I think within the drawing margin. Then Kamsky, he played board 2 against Grishuk. Grishuk having a good tournament so far, and Kamsky actually managed to win this game with black, with an Alekine's defense. Really surprising Grishuk in the opening, I guess, but at the end it turned out to be a tough endgame battle, where at the end Kamsky got rook, and rook against rook plus a bishop, so the well-known ending, which is a draw in the books. And of course those guys also know how to hold it, but with 30 seconds increment on the clock, Grishuk broke down at some point and lost the game. So it all depended on board 1. The boards 2 to 4 were 1.5 tied, so this match in Nakamura Kramnik is the decisive one here for the USA-Russia match. So let's see what happens. Naka opens with knight f3, Kramnik knight f6, and g3, which is an interesting choice, showing that Nakamura isn't in for some theoretical battle with complicated prepared lines, but he rather wants to play a long, complicated maneuvering kind of game, and maybe trying to complicate matters later. Kramnik plays g6, and in recent times he tends to surprise people. I think usually move d5 would have been mandatory for him. Just play like his usual solid self, but okay, he played g6. It's of course a fine move, but it signals his intention to go for some sort of King's Indian, Grunfeld, or other more asymmetrical structure. So c6. So it will be a Grunfeld most likely, and we got a Grunfeld. Fianchetto Grunfeld was c6, d5, where Nakamura elected to exchange on d5. White has got alternatives. He can also play more complicated, like b3 or knight d2, stuff like this. But c takes d5 is the tried and tested main line. And now an early knight c3. Here black can also castle. And after knight e5 we got another main line of this opening, which for years has been a favorite of Karpov. Played some very nice games with this this white structure. But here Kramnik immediately seized the opportunity to play knight e4 himself. And this leads to a change in the pawn structure, as we see. Nakamura played queen b3, attacking the pawn. So black took here. Now we have a different pawn structure. This knight maneuver with the time loss, knight e4, knight c3, but it helped to give black some point of attack. The c3 pawn is somewhat weak and can be attacked by black later. Castles and the immediate knight d2, which is an interesting move, I think a good one also. Immediately attacking d5. So black has no big alternatives. He covered this pawn with e6. And now e4, opening up the position. Of course, black doesn't want to take on e4, which would help white with quick development, and the knight would be very nice on e4. Also moves like knight bishop g5 or bishop h3 with potential invasions on d6 could be very irritating. So black doesn't want to take, and he used a little tactical trick to play knight c6 here. White would capture. Black has this intermediate move, attacking the queen, and he can actually retake the pawn just one move later and doesn't lose it. So white didn't take on d5. It wouldn't be nice strategically anyway to take there. So he just castled, and after knight a5 returned with the queen. The queen in the long term wants to switch to the king side. Queen c7 now, attacking the pawn, and queen f3. Of course, just protecting c3. White could also play other moves like this, for example. Also not bad, I guess. But okay, he wants to put the queen on the king side. Black now played b6, very logical, with bishop to a6 as a possibility. White attacked the rook on f8, which moved away, and now e5, closing the center. And now we see White's long-term idea. He wants to play on the king side, where black just has one defender with the g7 bishop, and White has ideas with pushing the h-pawn, or maybe regrouping the knight or the bishop towards the king side. Still, black has, I think, a fine position with this point of attack on c3. This is just a weakness, and black should be perfectly okay here. Also, please then let me know that the clock times are bogus. I didn't find a version of the game yet which has proper clock times. I'm sorry. Alright, bishop a6, rook e1. It was attacked after all. And rook c8. Yeah, all this looks very logical. Bishop b4, protecting the pawn. Now black played bishop to h6. Yeah, tickling this knight a bit. And it doesn't have such great squares. Nakamura just retreated with the queen to cover the knight. And we're close to a very interesting point here. Knight c6 from Kramnik. Bishop a3, it was attacked. Knight a5, bishop b4, knight c6. Yeah, and the problem is black simply threatens to take on b4 and play queen c2. So white cannot make any kind of move. So let's say we play h4, just for argument's sake. Then black would take and then invade with the queen. Queen c2 would be good. Also queen c3 is a possibility. So white really needs to move the knight, and after here needs to take care about this this pawn. Yeah, the logical kind of result here, in a way, would have been the draw with bishop b4 and knight c6, but Nakamura, and this is really admirable, he just played knight back to b1, and this is of course a risky move. It can't be a particularly great concept to to retreat the knight to b1, but he simply wanted to avoid the draw and fight on. I think at this point it was also very much necessary because of the team standings. It was, I think, at this point rather clear that Robson would have problems against Yakovenko this position, and also it didn't really look like Kramnik that Kamsky would win. So I think he just needed to play on a bit also for the team. So a good decision, but it's important that players actually make this kind of decision. Sometimes you see teams playing unsuccessfully simply because there are some concerns of players for their own rating or for whatever, but not for the team. And you see that Nakamura really wants the team to win, so he risks quite a bit of his own success here. Okay, black played now b5, which I don't really like. But okay, Kramnik certainly knows more about this game than I do. I don't know, I don't really like b5 here. Okay, his idea is to play probably knight c6 and b4, breaking up the structure so that the queen can actually enter at one point on c2. But still, I don't really like to put this bishop offside on a6. There were alternatives. Black could have played all kinds of stuff here. I'm trying to regroup here with on the c file and others. Let's say move like here with this idea, queen to d8 and rook d7, something like this. I don't know. I sort of like this more. But it wasn't a mistake or anything. It just like I wouldn't really turn to this move, I guess. b5, and now Nakamura finally gets something going on the king side. h4, knight c6, the mentioned plan with b4, and now bishop c5. He takes this opportunity to improve his bishop. Queen back to b8, and okay, this has a concrete idea. We'll see later. Queen e2, utilizing here the spin so that black cannot play b4. Played knight a5 now back, and white got his knight back into the game. Yeah, and here Kramnik played very forcefully. He just sacrificed the exchange here on c5, which is an interesting move. Maybe not the objectively best, but it's certainly the most aggressive continuation. And now just queen c8. He wants to get it back and then try to claim for compensation because of the weak c3 pawn. Possibly also e5 could be a slight weakness. Imagine bishop to g7, knight to c6 or knight to c4, then e5 isn't so easy to hold. Here Nakamura played knight f3, simply bringing this knight closer to the king side. Certainly a pragmatic decision. Knight b3 also was interesting, immediately attacking the knight so that this kind of continuation would just be winning for white, just an exchange up, so black cannot take. And in fact, after a move like queen c7, covering this, white could try for something like this with the idea of playing a4 quickly. I think white should be slightly better in this position, but black certainly has some compensation. He will get c5, probably even in this way, and it shouldn't be too awful for black. But white, I think, must be somewhat better, certainly. Okay, he decided on knight f3. Playing more on the king side, And yeah, Kramnik now took the pawn. And knight h2. Yeah, he wants to play something like this, getting the knight into f6, and followed by the queen on the king side. Kramnik now played bishop g7, which is okay. He just retreated this in anticipation of knight g4. And now Nakamura played h5. Yeah, and here we have the absolute critical position of the game, where Kramnik made, yeah, I think the decisive mistake, really. I didn't have enough time to really put lots of analytical power into this, but I don't really see, and the computer also doesn't, at least after a quick check, he doesn't see any big problem with just taking here. Or let's say any other move that is not the move played and which doesn't blunder material. Even just rook c8 is a fine move. Just increasing the pressure. As long as white doesn't get something serious on the king side or can play a4 with a good effect, then black always should be alright with the two bishops and the good structure for the exchange, and a pawn, of course. What he did in the game was the move g5, and this is really surprising to me because after other continuation there isn't something very threatening apparent, and what white is doing now is not exactly witchcraft. He just played h6, attacking the bishop, took here, and queen h5, winning a tempo on the bishop and having this in reserve. So this is a very natural and easy to see continuation. Probably he miscalculated something on the way, because this is already now very critical. The queen attacks the rook, winning a tempo, and white has the very quick attack, knight g4 f6, and this is, I think, close to being lost already. Played knight c6 now, and knight to g4. What should black do now? He cannot really play anything else now than queen e7 probably. Maybe you can play some computer-like move, king f8, and trying to somehow survive all this. It's not a very welcoming prospect though. White can also just play a move like, let's say here, intending a4, intending maybe use on this diagonal. It's just no fun. Black is simply in disarray now on the king side. This procedure with g5 h6 just sped up white's play so much. It's simply too much attacking power now. He played queen e7, and after this white has a simple technical solution. White exchanged queens and played a4. Yeah, and this now is the big problem. Black is attacked on b5. White threatens bishop f1 with a pin on this pawn. And what should black play? He simply doesn't have anything better than trying for some activity. The kind of stuff like you taking here is simply hopeless in the long run. Let's say rook takes, bishop needs to move, rook a7, and this is just an exchange for absolutely nothing. So Kramnik in this position after a4 tried for some desperate counterplay, and I think he did a marvelous job in muddying the waters and make it difficult for Nakamura to win. He played d4, and the idea was, after a takes, bishop takes, and rook takes a7, the idea now of d4 was to simply ignore the e7 knight now and push with d3. So black is going for desperate counterplay with the d pawn, but it is difficult still. Rook takes e7, Naka took it, d2, rook d1, and bishop e2. This was the whole idea. White, of course, has knight e3 to cover the rook. And in this position, black is a whole rook down, but he still has got a little bit of play with the d pawn. So there's still some tricky points here. Bishop takes e5, c4, and now h5. Black's idea is to play h4, dislodging the g-pawn, and then advance f5, f4. So that at the end maybe this knight actually has to move. Or maybe one idea is simply h4, takes on h4, and bishop f4. So black has some definite counterplay going. Nakamura played rook a7, and now h4 by Kramnik. In this position here, Nakamura had an alternative. He played rook a2. Of course, you also need to think about rook a8. This would have been a possibility. The question is, after rook takes, bishop takes, and obviously first taking here, and now taking on g3. If this endgame is really winning, I simply didn't have enough time to check this. I think it should be winning for white in some way, but it's maybe very tricky. Yeah, if you have fun analyzing somewhat weird endgames, this is one for you. Try to figure out if black has some chances to hold. I think it should be winning, really, but it's not something I would bet considerable amounts of money on. Nakamura played rook a2. I think this is also maybe better. It wasn't necessary yet to commit to this endgame, which might be winning but might be a draw. And after this, it's more of a technical thing. He needs to take now on d2, on d1, otherwise white just takes d2. And now we get this kind of position, which is of course comparable to the other one, but there's still rooks on, and I think this helps white a good deal. Yeah, c5, push the c-pawn, and black tried all that there is possible with the pawns to get some activity, and he managed to get in some real tricks here. Bishop h3, rook c8, attacking the pawn. White, of course, cannot play bishop f5 or something and give up the pawn. You really need to keep the c-pawn, otherwise you cannot win. So all pretty logical. f4 now. In this position, actually, I think Nakamura could have won somewhat quicker, but what he did was very nice at the end. So I'm not. I'm glad that he played it another way, because it was very nice. But yeah, I think it could have won relatively easily with rook g5 check. King moves, and now sack the rook here. And at the end, it's knight and bishop mate in a pretty easy form. White will get all the pawns and just has the basic knight and bishop mate. This would have been a bit easier, but he played king f1. The idea being that now he has got a very nice blockade on these pawns and will win in the long run. So what he did didn't spoil anything. The other one was just a bit quicker. Rook f6, rook a8, and at the end it's a question how white is able to promote the pawn. The trick is here always this f3 check. So let's say white would try to promote the pawn, then there's this move, and the pawn gets lost, something like this here. And this is a draw, obviously. Without a pawn you cannot win this. So this is the trick. The c7 move needs to be considered very cautiously, as f3 is the counterplay. So he played rook b7 first, black played king f6, and now king f3 blocking the pawn, and now the c-pawn is ready to move. But let's say what happens. Rook e7 takes and c7, and now you would say, okay, black resigns, right? But there's still e2 as the funny counterplay. If white would take now f3, then you would get the pawn and manage the draw. But in fact, after e2, of course, white can underpromote to a knight. So we have the rare occurrence in a top world-class grandmaster game of an underpromotion to a knight. Of course, it's with check, so this is the big point. Black needs to react to the check, and after this, white captures the pawn. Yeah, now we have the funny endgame of 3 minor pieces, 2 knights and 1 bishop against a single bishop and 2 pawns. That the pawns are there is actually rather unimportant, I would say, because they're so firmly blockaded. Yeah, and this is, I think, a relatively easy win. The minor pieces just get to positions where they maneuver black's king to the side, and at the end Nakamura managed to put up some nice net here with all these squares being controlled by the knight and the bishop, and we see a proper mating procedure here coming. Yeah, and all squares are covered. King h2, bishop here, and now black just has these 2 squares, and the problem is simply that in this kind of position it's simply made into, you cannot avoid the following: king h1, knight takes, and of course it's no stalemate. There is a bishop left, and the bishop needs to give up one of those 2 squares, so it's knight f2, checkmate. And yeah, a very funny finish to this game. Actually, Kramnik resigned 1 move or 2 moves before the checkmate. So a very very original kind of end of this great fight. Yeah, you need to really admire Nakamura for declining this draw offer with the repetition on move 20. It was move 23, and play on. Obviously, it involved some risks. I think Kramnik had for a long time a fine position, but he really made a big mistake with this g5 move, possibly or very likely actually in time trouble. And after this, Nakamura got a strong attack, and the only way really to defuse the attack was allow the queen exchange, but this transposed into a basically lost endgame. So a big win here for Nakamura himself. I mean, as a kind of individual personal success to beat Kramnik. I think he also beat him for the first time in a classical time control game. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is the case. I played a number of draws and he lost games, but I didn't. Oh, sorry, he won 1 King's Indian. I'm sorry. He won once in a King's Indian in Dortmund, where Kramnik incorrectly sacrificed a piece. So it wasn't the first win, but still a win against one of the all-time greats. He was a world champion after all, Kramnik. So yeah, and also a very big win for the US team, beating Russia. And now, yeah, the hunt for the gold, the overall gold medal in the Olympiad is wide open. There have been 9 rounds played now, of a total of 11 rounds. So 2 rounds left. And there are, I think, 4 teams, if my memory is correct now, tied with 15 points, which is the USA, China, Russia, and Armenia. And yeah, it's wide open. 2 rounds left. Lots of those teams have played against each other already, so I'm not 100% sure about about the following round, but I can try to look it up. I'm sorry. Let me just check. Round 10. Round 10 is played tomorrow on Friday the 8th. Okay, yeah, okay. The USA is playing China, which is of course super important, both with 15 points. And then Russia will play Argentina, who somehow fought their way up to the top. And Armenia plays the Netherlands, so also started a nice run. So yeah, I don't know, hard to tell. But of course, if China against the USA will have a winner, this team will have huge chances, of course, to win the tournament. I'm not 100% sure about the tiebreak rules, I must admit. I would need to look it up, what's exactly most important here in terms of tiebreaks. Yeah, but still a very, very interesting finish now of this tournament. And we can look forward to 2 more exciting rounds. Yeah, thanks for watching this great battle. And yeah, I think I'll put on a new video tomorrow right after round 10 to keep you informed what has happened. All right, till then.